They mocked her before she even spoke a word, sneering at the color of her skin, sizing up her battered suitcase, and dismissing her presence as if she were invisible. In a world that claims to be modern and fair, a black woman traveling alone was still seen as a target, still treated like she had wandered into a place where she did not belong. In the bright lights of a major American airport, surrounded by hundreds of witnesses, she was humiliated, pushed aside, and forced to endure the sharp edge of casual cruelty from those who thought they held all the power. They believed she was nothing more than what they saw. They thought she would stay silent, shrink away, accept it. They had no idea that the woman they tried to crush would soon decide their fate. Stay with us as we reveal how this story unfolds. If you stand for dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. Tell us where you're watching from and what part of this story cuts deepest for you. The airport bustled with the usual morning chaos, travelers dragging their suitcases across shiny tiles, announcements echoing overhead, families clustered together, and solo flyers hurrying through the maze of check-in lines. Monica Brooks stood quietly among them, a single mother with a simple navy blue suitcase that had seen better days. The clothes were neat but plain, her expression calm but focused, and her small, careful movements spoke of someone accustomed to handling herself with quiet dignity. As she edged closer to the counter, she adjusted the strap of her handbag and shifted her weight from one foot to another, trying to keep her young son's travel documents organized inside a battered folder. At the counter, Emma Collins tapped impatiently on the keyboard, her eyes scanning the line without real interest, until they landed on Monica. Something about Monica's appearance, maybe the scuffed suitcase or the well-worn sneakers, seemed to ignite a spark of disdain in Emma's gaze. With a smug smile creeping onto her lips, addressing Monica in a tone dripping with false politeness, "Are you sure you're in the right place?" she called out across the crowd. Heads turned, curious and judgmental, and Monica felt the heavy weight of 100 strangers' stares settle on her shoulders like lead. She held her head high, ignoring the heat crawling up her neck, and stepped forward with steady feet. Tyler Grant, stationed next to Emma, leaned over to peer at Monica's boarding pass with mock concern. Without even pretending to lower his voice, he muttered to Emma, "Maybe she thinks this is the bus station." His words were like a slap, and the smirk that followed only deepened the wound. Monica heard it. She heard every syllable, every intention behind them, but instead of reacting, she tightened her grip on her suitcase and waited. Emma took Monica's documents, flipping through them with an exaggerated slowness that made it clear she found the task beneath her. Tyler stood by, snickering under his breath, exchanging glances with other staff members nearby, who were quick to pick up on the silent mockery unfolding. Monica knew this dance all too well. She had lived it in grocery stores, in waiting rooms, even at parent-teacher meetings. She had become an expert at absorbing these small humiliations, burying them deep where they could not shake her focus. Still, every second she stood there felt like an eternity. The waiting, the deliberate mishandling of her paperwork, the lingering looks meant to remind her that she was different, that she did not belong in this space. Monica's breathing slowed, deepened, each inhale a conscious choice to remain composed. She refused to give them a spectacle. She refused to validate their cruelty by reacting with anger or hurt. Instead, she let her eyes drift past Emma, past Tyler, past the passengers now whispering or averting their gazes awkwardly. She thought of her son waiting back at home, of the conference she was attending, of the bigger future she was building. This moment, she reminded herself, would not define her. It would not even slow her down. Emma finally returned Monica's boarding pass with a careless flick of her wrist, as if tossing away something disposable. Tyler made a final snide comment, something about traveling light when you have nothing worth carrying, and laughter rippled among a few nearby staffers. Monica tucked the boarding pass into her folder without a word, collected her tagged suitcase and turned away from the counter. As she walked toward the security checkpoint, her back straight and her steps measured, Monica felt the slow burn of determination rising inside her. This was not the first time she had been underestimated, and she knew it would not be the last. But she also knew something they did not. Power did not always look the way people expected. Sometimes it wore plain clothes. Sometimes it carried a battered suitcase. Sometimes it moved quietly through a crowd until the perfect moment to be seen. In the distance, a flight attendant smiled warmly at another traveler. A child laughed, tugging at his father's sleeve. Life moved on around Monica, indifferent to the small storm she had just weathered. But Monica moved differently now. Every step she took was a silent promise to herself. This would not be forgotten. It would not go unanswered. Monica Brooks reached the security checkpoint with her documents firmly in hand and her suitcase trailing obediently behind her. Every step away from the check-in counter helped her regain a fraction of her calm, but the sting of what had just happened lingered in the back of her mind. She told herself to focus on the journey ahead, to remember that she had more important battles to fight than petty insults thrown by airport staff. She was about to place her luggage on the screening belt when a sharp voice called out behind her, causing her to pause. Emma Collins strode forward briskly, a laminated tag fluttering in her hand. Without any hint of urgency or care, she grabbed Monica's suitcase and yanked it toward herself under the pretense of needing to verify something. The forceful movement caused the cheap zipper to tear slightly, and before Monica could react, the suitcase split open at one corner, spilling clothes, documents, and personal items across the floor in full view of the surrounding passengers. A few gasps rippled through the crowd as people stopped to stare. Monica froze for a heartbeat, feeling a fresh wave of humiliation crash over her. She dropped to her knees quickly, gathering her belongings with practiced hands, trying to minimize the scene. But it was impossible to hide the scattered underwear, the crumpled travel brochures, the small collection of toys she had packed to surprise her son at the end of the trip. Every intimate detail of her life was now laid bare under the fluorescent lights of the terminal. Emma stood nearby with a small, satisfied smirk playing on her lips, making no move to assist. When Monica glanced up, their eyes locked for a brief, electric second. Emma shrugged as if to say accidents happened, then turned to Tyler Grant, who had sauntered over to watch the unfolding scene. Tyler leaned in close to Emma and muttered something that made her chuckle under her breath. "Looks like someone's moving house through the airport," he said with a sneer, loud enough for Monica to catch. Or maybe she thought she could sneak into first class by acting like she belongs. Emma giggled behind her hand, and a few bystanders gave small, uncomfortable laughs, not wanting to be associated, but unwilling to intervene. Monica's cheeks burned, not from embarrassment, but from a righteous anger she forced herself to suppress. She pressed her lips into a firm line and continued packing with deliberate care, refusing to allow her hands to shake or her posture to falter. A janitor approached hesitantly with a broom, offering to help, but Monica declined with a tight smile. She did not want pity. She did not want to give anyone an excuse to view her as weak or incapable. She zipped her suitcase shut as best she could, securing the torn section with an elastic strap she found at the bottom of the bag. Then she rose to her full height, brushed the dust from her knees, and nodded politely to the stunned security agent who had witnessed the entire ordeal but said nothing. As she placed the battered suitcase on the conveyor belt and walked through the metal detector, Monica's mind raced. She cataloged every detail, every slight, every humiliation. Not out of bitterness, but because she knew how the world worked. Documentation mattered, memory mattered, control over the narrative mattered. She had learned these lessons the hard way, rising from a teenage mother to the head of one of the most promising tech companies in America. She would not forget this day. On the other side of security, she retrieved her luggage without incident and found a quiet bench near her gate. She sat down, pulled out her notebook, and jotted down a few lines with steady hands. Names, times, locations, a timeline of events, evidence. She was not plotting revenge. She was preparing for justice. Monica understood better than most that dignity was not given freely, even in the face of casual cruelty disguised as customer service. Across the terminal, Emma and Tyler stood together, laughing over their coffee cups, oblivious to the magnitude of the mistake they had just made. They saw only a woman they thought was beneath them, a woman whose worth they measured by the quality of her suitcase and the cut of her clothes. They did not see the storm gathering just beyond their sight line. She also understood that silence could sometimes be mistaken for weakness. Rising calmly, she adjusted her bag, picked up her suitcase, and made her way back toward the customer service desk with determined steps. The same fluorescent lights glared overhead. The same impatient crowds pushed past. Monica moved through it all as if shielded by an invisible force field, untouched by the chaos. When she reached the counter, Emma looked up from her screen with a thin, unimpressed smile that barely concealed her irritation at seeing Monica again. Tyler lounged nearby, idly scrolling through his phone, pretending not to notice. Monica spoke clearly and evenly, requesting to speak with the manager on duty regarding the way she had been treated. Emma's smile widened slightly, but the chill in her eyes deepened. Without missing a beat, she folded her arms and replied, "I am the manager on duty today. If you have a problem, you are speaking to the right person." Fenella felt a flicker of anger rise, but she suppressed it. She knew that responding emotionally would only be used against her. She asked to file a formal complaint, her voice steady. Emma leaned back casually and gestured toward a stack of paperwork behind the counter. "Help yourself," she said sweetly. Tyler chuckled under his breath, earning a sharp glance from a nearby traveler who quickly looked away again, unwilling to intervene further. Monica stepped forward and picked up one of the forms. Her eyes scanned the page and her stomach tightened with frustration. The form was printed entirely in Spanish, a language she did not speak fluently enough to complete official documentation. She looked back at Emma, who only raised an eyebrow, as if daring her to make a scene. Tyler, unable to resist another dig, murmured just loud enough for Monica to hear, "We try to accommodate everyone. Maybe next time bring a translator." Monica pressed the form against the counter with steady hands. She refused to let them see her falter. Instead, she calmly asked for an English version of the complaint form. Emma smiled again, this time baring her teeth slightly, and told her that, unfortunately, they were all out of English forms at the moment. "Maybe you can try the website later," she added with mock helpfulness. For a brief moment, Monica considered pushing the issue further, demanding the right to file her complaint properly, but then she caught sight of a family nearby watching the scene unfold. A little girl clutched her mother's hand tightly, her wide eyes reflecting both confusion and unease. Monica realized that everything she did from this point forward would be part of the narrative others carried with them about women like her. With a quiet exhale, Monica tucked the Spanish-language form into her bag. She knew better than to waste her energy fighting people who had already decided she was beneath them. There were bigger weapons at her disposal, more powerful tools than angry words exchanged in a crowded terminal. She turned away from the counter, feeling Emma's gaze burning into her back, and headed once more toward her gate. Monica's mind moved quickly, already outlining the email she would draft once she reached her destination. Names, times, photographs of the damaged suitcase, notes on the verbal abuse. She would not engage these people on their level. She would rise above them in a way they could neither predict nor prevent. At the gate, she found a quiet corner and pulled out her tablet. Her fingers flew over the screen as she documented every detail while the memories were still fresh. She captured the smirks, the condescension, the deliberate obstruction. All of it laid out in a clean, professional tone, stripped of anger but heavy with the weight of truth. Monica had learned through hard experience that emotion might be dismissed, but facts could not be ignored. Across the terminal, Emma and Tyler continued about their shift as if nothing had happened. They laughed with other co-workers, swapped jokes, and basked in the satisfaction of another invisible victory. They did not yet realize that the woman they had tried to humiliate was no ordinary traveler. They saw only what they wanted to see. That blindness would cost them more than they could ever imagine. She reviewed the timeline she had written, checked the photos she had discreetly taken of the counter area, and organized her thoughts carefully. She would not be blindsided again. When her group was finally called to board, she rose with quiet grace, lifting her damaged suitcase, its side awkwardly secured with the elastic strap. She approached the gate with a measured pace, blending into the crowd, but alert to every glance, every shift in tone. She handed her boarding pass to the gate agent, expecting at least a momentary reprieve now that the worst seemed behind her. But fate had other plans. Emma Collins, still lingering near the boarding gate, under the guise of assisting with luggage flow, stepped forward and intercepted Monica before she could pass. Emma's eyes raked over the battered suitcase with a look of exaggerated horror. She shook her head slowly enough for nearby passengers to hear. "This luggage is not compliant with our safety standards. It could damage the conveyor belts or the cargo hold mechanisms." Monica felt the weight of the terminal's attention swing back onto her like a spotlight. She kept her expression neutral, refusing to flinch under the renewed scrutiny. Calmly, she asked what the issue was, pointing out that she had traveled with the same suitcase before without problems. Emma, savoring the moment, tilted her head and replied in a syrupy tone that, unfortunately, they had recently updated their policies. For the safety of all passengers and equipment, they could not allow that bag onto the flight without inspection or special repackaging. Monica knew exactly what this was. Another petty exercise of power, another public spectacle designed to remind her of where people like Emma thought she belonged. She wanted to argue, to demand that the policy be shown to her in writing, but she saw Tyler Grant hovering a few steps away, his phone in hand, and suspected he might be recording, hoping for an angry outburst he could later twist into justification. Monica tightened her grip on her suitcase and nodded, asking what she needed to do to proceed. Emma instructed her to step aside for a manual inspection. Monica obeyed without protest, though her chest burned with fury she refused to show. A few seconds later, as if on cue, a uniformed security officer approached. His name tag read, Logan Reed. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a clipped professional demeanor that might have been reassuring in a different context. Monica immediately recognized the pattern. Logan said he needed to perform a random additional security screening, Monica, sending alone now in a clearing of empty space where other passengers had suddenly edged away, simply nodded. She understood how randomness often operated in systems built to protect some at the expense of others. Logan gestured for Monica to follow him, a few steps away to a secondary inspection area. Monica complied, carrying her suitcase carefully, her head held high despite passengers lined up nearby pretended not to watch but stole glances nonetheless. Monica heard a woman whisper to her husband, "It's always the same type, isn't it?" The husband said nothing, shifting uncomfortably. Monica caught snippets of other conversations too, some sympathetic, most not. She stood silently while Logan opened her suitcase, rifling through the modest contents with the clinical detachment of someone inspecting something unworthy of real attention. He pulled out her carefully packed folders, her clothes, her son's toys, and a slim laptop. Finding nothing amiss, he repacked everything haphazardly, causing another small tear to form along the already damaged seam of the suitcase. When Logan finished, he closed the suitcase without apology and gestured for Monica to return to the boarding area. Monica said nothing. She simply gathered her belongings, straightened her shoulders, and walked slowly back toward the line of passengers still filtering onto the plane. Some watched her openly now, some with pity, others with cold judgment. None offered a word of support. Emma stood by the gate desk, arms crossed, a small, victorious smile playing on her lips. Tyler made a show of yawning dramatically, as if the whole incident had been a source of minor entertainment. Monica met their gaze without blinking. She felt no shame, only the ironclad certainty that all of this, the insults, the manufactured obstacles, the casual cruelties, would soon be exposed in a way neither Emma nor Tyler could imagine. Her mind remained razor-sharp, cataloging every action, every word, every hostile glance she had endured since entering the terminal. She knew it was not over yet. A small, familiar voice in her mind warned her to remain vigilant, because experience had taught her that cruelty often traveled in groups, never content with a single attack. As she neared the plane's entrance, a uniformed gate agent called out her name, requesting she step aside for a moment. Monica obeyed without hesitation, her face calm, her hands steady, although inside a cold knot began to tighten in her stomach once again. Standing off to the side, Monica noticed a middle-aged white couple observing her from a few feet away. They had been behind her in line since the security checkpoint and had witnessed everything: the spilled belongings, the invasive security check, the manufactured delays. The woman clutched her designer purse tightly against her chest, whispering something to her husband. He responded with a brief nod and a faint smile that held no sympathy, only detached amusement. Monica caught fragments of their conversation, enough to understand the underlying tone. "She probably caused it herself," the woman said, her voice low but clear enough. The man shrugged, replying, "Always looking for trouble, I guess." Their words sliced into the heavy air like knives, casual in their cruelty, delivered with the ease of people confident that the world was shaped in their favor. The gate agent returned with a stern expression, holding Monica's boarding pass between two fingers as if it were contaminated. She informed Monica that unfortunately, due to concerns about the condition of her luggage, they could not allow her to board with it. Monica stared at her, unblinking, willing herself to remain composed even as frustration and disbelief clawed at the edges of her restraint. She asked what options were available. The agent replied in a rehearsed tone that Monica could either repack her belongings into an airline-approved bag, which she did not have, or she could forfeit the suitcase entirely and travel with just her personal item. Monica's suitcase contained everything: documents, personal items, gifts for her son, and abandoning it was not an option. Yet she also recognized the futility of arguing further. She requested to speak to a supervisor, but the agent merely shook her head, claiming there was no one available. "If you cannot comply, we will have to reassign your seat," the agent said briskly. Monica nodded slowly, absorbing the reality of the situation. This was not about a suitcase. This was not about safety. This was about power, about humiliation, about ensuring that Monica knew her place in their hierarchy. The couple behind her whispered again, the woman remarking, "At least they are making the flight safer," as if Monica herself were a threat. Monica stepped back from the boarding area, her heart pounding in her chest, but her exterior calm. She watched other passengers stream past her, some sparing her quick, uneasy glances, others pretending not to see her at all. In that moment she made a decision. She would not beg. She would not make a scene that would be twisted into justification for their actions. Instead, she would make them answer on a stage far larger than this terminal, under lights far harsher than the fluorescent glow above their heads now. She turned away from the gate with a deliberate slowness, her damaged suitcase rolling behind her like a symbol of defiance rather than defeat. She found a quiet corner again, away from the crowd, and pulled out her phone. Her fingers moved swiftly, drafting an email more powerful than any confrontation at the gate could have been. Every detail meticulously recorded, every slight documented, every name preserved. She attached photos of the suitcase, the damaged contents, the emails confirming her flight, and a brief description of the events, free of emotion but heavy with facts. As she hit send, she felt a strange calm wash over her. This battle would not be won in shouting matches or tearful pleas. It would be won through exposure, through accountability, through consequences that reached far beyond the petty malice of a few. Ernie Millis of a few. Onto portabilities, the way she was supposed to board slowly pulled away from the gate, its nose lifting toward the sky. She kept her posture straight, her face calm, even as a slow burn of indignation continued to grow inside her. She knew she could not afford to waste energy on anger in this moment. Every action had to be measured, every step calculated. She checked her phone, confirming that her email to the corporate office had been sent successfully, with all relevant documentation attached. Satisfied, she closed her device and prepared to leave the boarding area, intent on finding an alternative route to her destination if necessary. She would not allow the petty cruelty of strangers to derail her purpose. As Monica rose to her feet, a sharp, mocking voice rang out across the terminal. Emma Collins, standing behind the gate desk with arms crossed and a triumphant expression, called out loudly enough for half the waiting passengers to hear. "Maybe you should try the bus station next time," she said with a smirk. "It's probably more your style." A ripple of quiet laughter spread among a few bystanders, and now felt emboldened by the spectacle. Monica paused, her back still turned to Emma, weighing the temptation to respond. But she knew better. Silence could sometimes be a far louder rebuke than words. Without giving Emma the satisfaction of a reaction, Monica tightened her grip on her suitcase and continued walking toward the main terminal exit. The noise of the airport seemed to fade into a dull hum as she focused solely on her path forward. However, even as she tried to maintain her dignity, another small humiliation was being prepared behind her back. Tyler Grant, still lingering at the gate, had taken a quick photograph of Monica's battered suitcase earlier in the case. Now he was hunched over his phone, typing rapidly, his thumbs dancing with malicious glee across the screen. Within minutes, a post appeared on his personal social media account, featuring the photo of Monica's suitcase with a caption that read, "Travel Goals," followed by a series of laughing emojis. He made sure the privacy settings were open so that other airport staff and frequent flyers in his network could join in on the joke. Comments began pouring in, almost immediately. Some joked about traveling light, others made snide remarks about people who clearly did not belong in certain. Tyler grinned broadly at the growing list of reactions, basking in the camaraderie of shared cruelty. Meanwhile, Monica found a small cafe near the terminal entrance and sat at a table in the corner, out of the main traffic of travelers. She ordered a coffee she barely tasted, her mind racing as she considered her next moves. She was acutely aware that every moment she remained in the airport extended her vulnerability to further harassment. But she also knew she needed to stay long enough to collect her thoughts, to fortify herself before moving into action. She pulled out her tablet again, refreshing her email inbox. Already an automated reply from the airport's corporate complaint department had arrived, promising a full review within 48 hours. She saved a copy of the social media post Tyler had made, which had quickly spread among local accounts. Someone she knew in the travel industry had already forwarded it to her with a note attached. "Thought you might want to see this." Monica stared at the photo for a long moment, absorbing the cruelty embedded in something as seemingly harmless as a joke. It was never about the suitcase. It was about stripping away her dignity, about reinforcing the idea that she did not belong. But what they failed to understand was that Monica Brooks had built her entire life on proving people wrong. She composed a second email, this one addressed directly to the CEO of the parent company that managed the airport. It was concise, but potent, laying out not just the events of the morning but the broader culture of disrespect and discrimination that allowed such behavior to flourish unchecked. She attached screenshots of Tyler's post, the timestamps from her boarding denial, and the details of every employee involved. She finished the message with a quiet warning. "Actions speak louder than words. I look forward to seeing how your organization chooses to respond." Monica sent the email and placed her tablet back into her carry-on. She stood up from the table, smoothing the wrinkles from her blouse, and took a deep, steadying breath. She would find another way to reach her destination. This delay, painful as it was, would not deter her. Monica left the cafe with slow, purposeful steps, her mind sharpened, and it had been all morning. The injustice she had endured no longer felt like a weight dragging her down, but instead like a current, pushing her forward. She moved across the terminal, weaving through crowds of travelers, oblivious to the quiet battle that had been unfolding around them. In her hand, her phone vibrated softly, as replies from contacts across the corporate world began to trickle in. She did not check them yet. Her focus remained locked on the path ahead. As she reached the central concourse, she saw Emma standing near the check-in counter once again, overseeing the boarding process for another flight. Monica's appearance seemed to jolt Emma from her idle conversation with Tyler. A dark satisfaction flickered across Emma's face as she strode toward Monica, eager to assert her authority one final time. Emma's voice was sharp and commanding as she told Monica she was loitering in a restricted area and needed to leave immediately. Monica listened without reaction, her expression unreadable. Around them, other employees and a few passengers slowed their steps to watch. Some recognized Monica from earlier incidents, their expressions curious or smug. Monica did not argue. She simply tilted her head slightly, as if permitting Emma's words with clinical detachment, and then pulled out her phone. In a few swift taps, she composed an email addressed to a private contact list few in the airport would ever know existed. Her fingers moved with precision as she typed a single devastating line. "Terminate contract immediately." Then, without hesitation, she hit send. The email traveled silently through secure servers, landing first on the phones of two senior executives at Skybridge Solutions, then cascading down through a series of automated systems. By the time Monica placed her phone back in her bag, the machinery of corporate authority had already begun to turn. She offered Emma a small, enigmatic smile, one that carried no warmth, only certainty. Emma, reading the gesture, smirked back triumphantly, believing she had won some final victory. Monica turned away without another word, her suitcase rattling quietly behind her as she moved toward the exit. She knew it would not take long now. She knew exactly how these systems worked, and she had just set in motion consequences far beyond anything Emma or Tyler could comprehend. As Monica walked past the rows of shops and departure boards, she caught sight of Tyler glancing at his phone, his grin faltering slightly as he read a notification he did not understand. Emma joined him moments later, their heads bent together over the glowing screen. Confusion spread across their faces like ink in water. Monica did not slow her pace. She exited the terminal into the bright midday sun, inhaling deeply as the crisp air washed over her. The day was not ruined. It was reclaimed. It was transformed. She hailed a cab and gave the driver the address of a nearby hotel. There was no rush. Events were already unfolding without her needing to lift another finger. She understood that true power did not shout or flail wildly in public. True power moved like an invisible current, shaping events quietly until it became undeniable. She had learned these lessons well, building Skybridge Solutions from nothing into a technology powerhouse that airports, governments, and major corporations relied upon without fully understanding the woman behind the empire. As the cab turned onto the avenue leading to her hotel, Monica's phone vibrated again. She glanced at the notification and allowed herself a faint, satisfied nod. The first corporate alert had gone out. Skybridge Solutions was officially beginning the process of terminating its $800 million, 0-cents partnership with the Regional Airport Authority. By the time Monica stepped through the glass doors of the hotel lobby, the higher floors of the airport's executive offices were already descending into controlled panic. Back at the airport, chaos had begun to take root. Jonathan Price, the deputy director of operations, stood frozen in the middle of the executive wing, staring at the urgent email flashing on his screen. His hands, usually steady from years of high-pressure management, trembled slightly as he reread the message. Termination of contract effective immediately. Subject to breach clauses outlined in Section 4. The words burned into his vision. He knew what this meant. Without Skybridge Solutions' proprietary technology managing their logistics, communications, and security systems, the airport would spiral into operational disaster within weeks, maybe even days. Scrambling, he barked orders to subordinates to find out who at Skybridge had authorized this. Within minutes, he received an answer that turned his blood to ice. It had not been some middle manager retaliating. It had been the CEO herself, Monica Brooks. In the same breath, Jonathan realized the mistake they had made. Someone had offended a client whose influence dwarfed their entire operating budget. He demanded an emergency meeting with the airport's leadership team, his voice cracking under the strain of urgency. Messages flew through internal servers summoning department heads and senior administrators from all over the complex. Within half an hour, a hastily convened crisis meeting filled the largest conference room in the building. Jonathan stood at the front, wiping sweat from his forehead with a trembling hand, facing a room of grim faces. He explained the situation in blunt terms. Skybridge Solutions was pulling out. They were taking with them not just infrastructure but reputation, investment, and the trust of other potential partners watching from the sidelines. As he finished speaking, a heavy silence filled the room, broken only by the... Meanwhile, Emma Collins and Tyler Grant remained completely unaware of the gathering storm. They lingered near the check-in desks, sharing jokes and scrolling through social media. Emma smirked at the growing number of likes Tyler's mocking post had received, oblivious to the fact that it was now being screenshotted by journalists and corporate investigators alike. She remarked casually, "Some people just don't know their place, do they?" Tyler laughed, tapping out a fresh comment under the post. Neither of them noticed the series of airport managers scanning the terminal, looking for them with urgency written across their faces. It wasn't until two senior supervisors appeared, stiff and unsmiling, that the first tendrils of doubt crept into Emma's mind. Both were escorted into a private conference room, where Jonathan Price, pale and visibly shaken, waited. Without any preamble, he asked them if they were familiar with Skybridge Solutions. Tyler frowned, still half smirking, and answered that it sounded vaguely familiar. Emma shrugged. Jonathan stared at them in disbelief before explaining in a low, strained voice. He said, "And thanks to your behavior, we just lost an $800 million, 0-cents contract." The words seemed to hit Emma and Tyler like physical blows. Tyler opened his mouth, closed it again, struggling to form a coherent thought. Emma's face turned an ashen gray, realization washing over her like a tidal wave she had no hope of escaping. At that very moment, Monica Brooks sat by the window of her hotel room, sipping coffee, watching the planes take off and land beyond the glass. She was not gloating. She felt no rush of triumph, only a deep, steady satisfaction that justice had begun to take its course. Her phone buzzed with a new message from her legal team confirming that Skybridge's formal withdrawal letter had been received by all necessary parties. Monica tapped a brief reply. "Proceed as planned." Jonathan did not waste time with lengthy explanations. He handed each of them a formal notice of suspension, effective immediately, pending investigation. His voice was cold and clipped as he spoke. "You are hereby relieved of your duties. Collect your personal belongings and leave the premises immediately." The three employees stared at the papers in front of them, their words blurring under the weight of what they had done. They had not simply lost their jobs. They had shattered their reputations, detonated their careers, and ignited a scandal that was already spiraling far beyond the terminal walls. The walk of shame began at the main terminal entrance. Word had spread like wildfire through internal messaging systems, and now passengers, security officers, and airline staff watched openly as Emma, Tyler, and Logan were escorted through the airport, under the wary gaze of management. Cameras flashed. A few bold travelers captured the scene on their phones, uploading grainy videos to social media within seconds. Within minutes, trending hashtags began to surface. Airport disgrace. Unit 23 money. Racial profiling. Monica Brooks's name appeared alongside the headlines, though she herself remained silent, her team issuing no public statements for now. She did not need to. The evidence spoke louder than any press release could. Journalists camped outside the airport began broadcasting live segments, their voices urgent and incredulous. Reports of discrimination, misconduct, and gross mishandling of power saturated the airwaves. CNN ran a breaking news banner within an hour. The anchor's voice carried across living rooms nationwide. We are following a developing story at Southbridge International Airport, where allegations of racial discrimination have resulted in the immediate suspension of 3 airport employees and the termination of a major corporate partnership worth over $800 million. ABC News followed closely, providing footage of Monica's dignified silence as she left the airport earlier that morning, juxtaposed against the images of Emma and Tyler slinking past reporters, their faces hidden behind hastily donned sunglasses. Commentators across networks dissected every detail. How had such blatant mistreatment occurred at one of the nation's busiest transportation hubs? What systemic failures had allowed this culture of bias and abuse to fester unchecked? Meanwhile, the financial world responded with merciless efficiency. Shares of Apex Aviation Group, the parent company overseeing Southbridge International, plummeted within hours of the story. Breaking. Investors scrambled to distance themselves. Analysts predicted long-term reputational damage that could take years to repair. Emergency board meetings were convened as executives tried to formulate a damage control strategy. But the bleeding was already too deep. Monica Brooks, without speaking a single word publicly, had dismantled years of carefully curated corporate image in a single quiet day. Her strength was not in shouting but in choosing the battlefield and the timing so precisely that her opponents never saw the blow coming until they were already falling. At the heart of the storm, Monica remained composed. She watched the unfolding chaos from the quiet of her hotel room, noting every headline, every public apology issued, every clumsy attempt by airport leadership to reframe the narrative. None of it mattered. The truth had already taken root. It spread with a life of its own now, fed by the righteous anger of those who had seen themselves in her ordeal, by the reporters eager to uncover every hidden layer of institutional rot, by the silent witnesses who had finally found the courage to speak up. In the span of a few hours, what had started as a private humiliation had become a national reckoning. Emma, Tyler, and Logan faced more than termination. Investigations into previous complaints surfaced, old records dug up by diligent journalists hungry for the full story. Anonymous former employees began to share accounts of similar incidents, painting a damning portrait of a workplace steeped in entitlement and quiet cruelty. Lawsuits loomed. The possibility of criminal charges was whispered about in legal circles. Monica, however, did not revel in their downfall. She simply observed it, a necessary course correction in a world that too often forgot the cost of unchecked arrogance. Weeks passed, but the fallout from the scandal at Southbridge International Airport continued to ripple outward. Monica Brooks quietly resumed her work, focusing on expanding Skybridge Solutions partnerships with cities that shared her vision of dignity and accountability. She did not need to chase headlines. The momentum of change carried itself. Meanwhile, Emma Collins and Tyler Grant struggled under the harsh light of public scrutiny. Their faces, once anonymous in the sea of customer service workers, became synonymous with systemic arrogance and racial profiling. Job offers dried up instantly. Friends and acquaintances distanced themselves. They found their social media profiles flooded with messages demanding accountability, some angry, others heartbreakingly disappointed. In desperation, both Emma and Tyler issued public apologies through their legal representatives, acknowledging their role in the events that had unfolded. "We realize now the harm our actions have caused," Emma's statement read. "We are committed to learning and doing better." But Monica understood that words without actions were empty. When approached through intermediaries, Monica's team presented an unexpected opportunity. A chance for Emma and Tyler to enroll in a year-long restorative justice program partially funded by Skybridge Solutions. The program focused on community service, education on systemic inequalities, and active participation in initiatives supporting marginalized groups. Participation was not mandatory, but Monica made it clear, without genuine effort toward change, they would remain symbols of failure, forever defined by a moment of cruelty. Reluctantly, at first, then with growing sincerity, Emma and Tyler accepted. They attended workshops where they sat alongside people whose experiences of discrimination far eclipsed the existent. They volunteered at community centers, organized fundraisers for youth scholarships, and publicly committed to amplifying voices they had once dismissed. Logan Reed, the security officer, who had played a smaller but still damaging role in Monica's ordeal, faced a different path. The investigation revealed that while he had participated, he had also expressed discomfort afterward and attempted to raise concerns with his supervisors before the scandal exploded. His efforts, though too late to prevent damage, were acknowledged. Rather than fighting his suspension, Logan chose to walk a different road. He applied to volunteer with a national organization, advocating for passenger rights and dignity in public spaces. After months of training and community outreach, he became an advocate for travelers who felt targeted or mistreated. Logan spoke candidly at events, admitting his past mistakes and urging others in the industry to recognize the look on Monica's face. That day, calm, unwavering, and utterly dignified in the face of contempt. For Monica, closure did not come from their punishment, but from their transformation. She did not celebrate their downfall. She celebrated their choice to rise. In her mind, true justice was not about retribution, but about awakening. Her belief remained steadfast. People could change if they were given a reason to see differently, a chance to repair what they had broken. Skybridge Solutions grew stronger in the aftermath, its reputation burnished by Monica's silent integrity. Other airports and corporations reached out to request consultations on how to build inclusive environments, how to hold power accountable, how to listen before it was too late. Monica agreed, but always with a condition. Commitment had to be real, not performative. Change had to be systemic, not cosmetic. Dignity was non-negotiable. One morning months later, Monica stood in a bright conference hall preparing to give a keynote speech about leadership and resilience. As she reviewed her notes, she noticed two familiar faces in the crowd, Emma and Tyler, seated quietly among hundreds of attendees. They did not approach her. They did not seek recognition. They were simply there to listen, to learn, to bear witness. Monica smiled softly to her. She stepped onto the stage, the room falling silent in anticipation. She spoke not of revenge, not of the scandal, but of the enduring strength found in perseverance, in grace, in the refusal to be diminished. Every setback, she said, is just another stone on the road you build toward the life you deserve, and the greatest victories are often the ones no one else sees. The end. If you found Monica's story as powerful as we did, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more true stories that remind us what dignity and justice truly mean. What part of Monica's journey hit you the hardest? Was it the silent resilience she showed, or the way she turned injustice into change? I would love to hear your thoughts. And tell me, where are you watching from today? Your stories and your voice matter here. Drop a comment and let's keep this conversation going.